So last week we gave a quick preview of what we're talking about here for the winter and spring, looking at what is wisdom? What is wisdom for any age, regardless of how old or young you are, regardless of what era you happen to find yourselves in. Hopefully, a lot of these messages could be taught in 50 years and 50 years ago, albeit we have a unique opportunity to apply wisdom in our context, in our time frame. So, when we talk about reading this book, usually when I was first starting to read books, also known as I didn't really read a book in high school, okay? Even though they assigned one, I went online and read the Cliff Notes and that was it. But then when I was actually assigned books to read, I would say, oh, well, I've got to get this many pages done. The introduction stuff, I'm going to skip that. Just jump right to the first chapter because those pages don't count for my assignment. But what did I do? I missed out on the introduction. Hey, reader, this is what this book is about. Well, gosh, that would have been helpful to read that ahead of time. And that's what you're going to get when we start reading the first little bit of Ecclesiastes. He's going to start proposing something. So tonight, we're going to say that this is the thesis of Ecclesiastes. So if you guys will open up, we'll jump right in to Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. So I'm reading from the New English Translation, so it might not match what you're saying, but a lot of the words will be very similar. Okay? Ecclesiastes 1, just the first couple verses. The words of the teacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity, vanity, laments the teacher. Everything is vanity, absolute vanity. All right, well, let's just go ahead and back up and go home. I mean, everything's vanity, right? But what does he say? He says, everything is vanity. That is quite a big statement. It's quite a big statement. So instead of just packing up and saying, well, let's just wash our hands of this, I mean, we're done, right? We gave some guidelines on how to read through Ecclesiastes last week, so let's practice them. We said, don't create a caricature where you blow one thing out of proportion. Be humble when you come to the text, because this is the Word of God. Let the author speak. If he says certain things in a certain way, uses certain terms, what does he mean by them? How does he use those words? We'll talk about that in a minute. How do we be balanced and firm? Let him speak in the way he's going to speak. So I hope you're going to find that this author, he's going to shoot straight with you. He's not going to pull any punches. He's just going to say things like it is. He's not going to let you walk around with rose-colored glasses on about the way the world is and is not. He's also not going to be, oh, woe is me, just like Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh, okay? He's not going to dive into either ditch. Oh, rose-colored glasses, everything's great, or, oh, everything's terrible, ho-hum, okay? I hope you get the Eeyore reference. I know we got quite a variety of ages in here, all right? So some of the words that he uses, well, right off, one of the first words is who he is. The who he is question, his name is Kohelet. Okay, so you see it up here. You'll see it up here saying, you got that one, Nick? Yeah. So this is the Hebrew. You read it from the right to the left. Can everybody say it with me? Kohelet. Kohelet. Okay, you've learned one thing for today. I think you're probably done now, right? Yes, yep, somebody got that joke, good. So this is his name, but it's actually a title. It's a title for someone who brings people together to speak words of wisdom, to have a reasoned discussion. So if he's bringing people together for a reasoned discussion and he's a king, what is he doing? He's probably bringing people into his court to hear his wise words. So what does that say about the audience? Well, they probably have a little bit of understanding about what is and isn't wise. So you are now the audience, listening to Kohelet talk. He's going to bring up all kinds of various phrases, words, ways he describes things, because he's bringing people together to say, let's reason together about this. And that's why he doesn't pull punches, because the people in the audience he's expecting, they kind of know their stuff. And so do you. So you're in good company here. I would think that this is also Solomon. Okay, I think the author here is Solomon. So if you're familiar with some of the Old Testament, like in 1 Kings, you'll get an account of why Solomon is so wise. He's so wise because God answers his prayer request for wisdom. He becomes king and he says, oh Lord, I need wisdom to rule this great people that you have given us. I could ask for all kinds of gold and silver and wealth, but I ask first for wisdom and how to lead and rule these people. And God says, well, that's a great prayer request. We're going to answer that and give you all the other stuff you didn't ask for. So he gets great wisdom. People come from all around the Mediterranean area to hear him speak, like the Queen of Sheba. His wisdom spreads. He writes a decent amount of the Old Testament. He writes Ecclesiastes. He writes a whole bunch of Proverbs. He writes a couple of Psalms. So he's accountable for several pieces here in the Old Testament. And I find that valuable because he writes a lot that lasts the test of time, because wisdom should last the test of time. I want you guys to turn over to the end of the book, because he's also going to tell you here what he's doing, what he's writing, and why he's going to say it a certain way. In chapter 12, verse 10, chapter 12, verse 10, okay, the teacher, or some of your translations might say preacher, sought to find delightful words and to write accurately truthful sayings. So here's his goal. He wants to bring together a group of people, present accurate, true things to give to them for their consideration so that they might know what is and isn't wise, what guarantees you do and don't get from wisdom. So he seeks to write these words out carefully, and he writes very succinctly. He writes in 12 chapters what people take whole books to describe. Okay? So let's turn back to chapter 1, and let's continue on. So he says there in verse 2, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. It's a little word here. This word vanity, it's like... how many of you have a cup of coffee right in front of you? Okay? You see the steam coming off your cup of coffee? What is that steam? It's just there and gone, right? It's a little vapor. That's this word here. It's hevel, hevel. It's vanity. It's just a wisp. It's just a breath. It's just a wind, steam that passes. If you try to catch it, right, you're not going to really catch much. It's just steam. It's a vapor that passes through. So it's not necessarily to say everything is valueless. Okay? That's why the word I think is best said vanity. Because is it meaningless? Possibly. But you're going to have to read what else he says to give an assessment. Saying that something's vapor is one thing. Saying that it's meaningless is a little different thing. So let's let him speak in what he says. He also says, all is vanity. Now, sometimes when you say the word all, you think of every last little possible thing. Do you think he has in mind that God is vanity? No. He has a certain context. His context, which will be throughout this entire book, is life here under the sun. He keeps using this phrase over and over again, life under the sun. Those are the things that we all have to deal with, right? We're going to talk about all these topics: death, money, wealth, wisdom, foolishness, madness, laughter. We're going to talk about these things that we all have to deal with. We run into on a daily basis. So he's going to say that these things are vanity. All is vanity. These things under the sun. That's his thesis. Now, how is he going to defend it? Okay, let's continue reading. Verse 3. Chapter 1, verse 3. What benefit do people get from all the effort which they expend on earth? A generation comes and a generation goes, but the earth remains the same through the ages. Wah, wah, wah. This is a sobering statement, right? Naked you come, naked you're going to go. You're not going to take it with you. Okay? If you haven't never heard that, you missed out on a lot of great wisdom from people older than you who've recognized, hey, life's a vapor. You came in naked, you're going to go out naked. You can be buried with stuff, but it doesn't mean your stuff's going to be there for you to enjoy. Okay? And sometimes, what do we know? Labor doesn't always work out for us, does it? Like he says, what benefit do people get from all the effort which they expend on earth? Sometimes it doesn't work out for you the way you want it, does it? I mean, that might have happened at work yesterday. I got this thing, I had this plan, I was going to try and get this done, but it was a Monday. So it happened this way instead of this way, right? Everybody's going to die. Yeah, that's kind of obvious. And then he's going to say, the sun is going to keep going. So let's pick up here in verse 5. The sun rises and the sun sets. It hurries away to a place from which it rises again. The wind goes to the south and circles around to the north. Round and round the wind goes, and on its rounds it returns. All the streams flow into the sea, but the sea is not full. And to the place where the streams flow, there they will flow again. What do you get here? Nature. Nature just keeps happening, right? Sun comes up, sun goes down. Sun comes up, sun goes down. Sun comes up, sun goes down. You know, the water cycle. Probably remember this from like earth science way back when, right? Water evaporates, collects in clouds, and it rains, and then falls downstream and goes, we got a cycle. The earth keeps spinning, the earth keeps spinning, the earth keeps spinning, and it keeps doing its thing, it keeps doing its thing. And what does it do? It never stops to say, hey, good job for you, right? Nature just doesn't do that. These cycles continue on. They were going on long before you and long after you. That's kind of a hard pill to swallow. Because what does it say? It gives perspective of, all this has gone before me, it will be here after me. What can I learn from my good observations of this creation that God has given? Cycles are going to continue. Now, does God ultimately bring nature to its final end goal in the future? Is God going to do that? Yes. Is that what he's talking about? No. He's not concerned with that. He's just making observations. What can I see? What can I acknowledge with the things that are right in front of me? All this stuff that nature, right? The ocean never gets full. It evaporates and then it starts all over again. You'd think that all these processes get you somewhere. That all this activity is going somewhere. But as far as you can tell, for generations and generations and generations, it just keeps going. It keeps going. So how can we step back and say, well, what does that mean? What does that look like for me to say, wow, God, you've created this? It's beautiful to see all these things happening, right? Sunrises and sunsets, they're great. But they keep happening over and over again. Not only does that happen in nature, but that also happens in what we do as mankind. So let's continue on 8 through 11, and we'll stop at verse 11 for tonight. All this monotony is tiresome. No one can bear to describe it. The eye is never satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear ever content with hearing. What exists now is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing truly new on earth under the sun. Is there anything about which someone can say, look at this, it is new? It has already been done long ago before our time. No one remembers the former events, nor will anyone remember the events that are yet to happen. They will not be remembered by the future generations. So, these cycles you see in nature happen in the course of human history, right? So, we have some varied ages here. We've got people that I'm going to guess are early 20s, and no offense, I'm going to guess maybe up to 70. We're not going to say anything beyond 70, okay? But what can we say? These things still happen, right? I think as time goes by, you recognize, that's just like a same thing, but with new clothes on. It's not new, nothing new under the sun. But I'm going to let you guys discuss that in your groups in a few minutes. Do you even agree with that? Do you think he's right in saying there's nothing new under the sun? Let's try a few. What's coming up in a few weeks? Really big event. Super Bowl. Okay, a few people said it. The Super Bowl's coming up in a few weeks. What Super Bowl is this? Is Super Bowl 57? Okay, 57. So I was watching an interview a few months ago with a football player who was in like Super Bowl 4 or 5, something around that. And it was interesting. He said, they're just going to do it again next year. I was shocked for him. I mean, that seems odd. Like, we're just going to do it again next year. Like, it's not like this was just a guy who happened to be, riding the bench and whatnot. He was one of the, main players at the time. And he had the perspective say, they're going to do it again next year. And they've been doing it again for a few decades, right? But what happens every year? Oh, let's get excited. Let's spend tons of money on commercials and everything. I don't mind. Watch the game. I have friends over, okay? That's great. Just don't forget, they're going to do it again next year, okay? So how about a phone? I just got myself a new iPhone 14. I don't use it to its potential because I don't care that much, okay? I just needed a new device because the other one wouldn't do what I needed it to do. So there's probably people who could show me, man, you could do this, you could do that. Okay, that's great. There's an iPhone 15 coming, right? What does a phone do? It expands your senses, right? It expands your voice over great distances so that other people can hear, and vice versa, and for you to go and see things that you can't see right where you're at, right? The things you can look at on your phone, on your screen, you can see them versus you have to go really far in order to see them on a web page. People have been doing that for thousands of years. They've wanted to amplify their voice. That's why Roman amphitheaters still exist today, because spread the voice. I want everybody to hear the play, the presentation, whatever. It's just a new form of the same thing, okay? Or even exploring the moon. Well, a few hundred years ago, they explored America, and then they explored Africa. Like, it's just an exploration with some adventure and some risk. Now, it's not to say that those things are bad. But what does it say? It says perspective on them. Do you guys remember last week? I read this statement from Paul where he's applying wisdom to a specific situation. He says, the stomach is for food, and food is for the stomach. That's great. I'm not going to let people's preferences about certain types of meat they do and don't eat dictate the way I go about it, because it is available as free and liberty for me to eat. But I also recognize the food is for stomach and stomach is for food, but God's going to do away with both of them. That's perspective. And he'll say right then in the same sentence, I will not be owned by anything. That sounds like freedom, because he enjoys a great meal and then he moves on. Sometimes my wife, several years ago, my wife gave me a quick one-liner, and I'm like, ooh, ouch. Because I like to go out to eat, and I'm willing to spend a little bit more money on something that I cannot make myself, okay? And she's like, Adam, you're just going to poop it out in a few hours. Oh, cool, honey, cool. Anyways, moving on. But what do those statements say? They say perspective, and they say application based on perspective, right? Oh, that will come and go. Enjoy it while it's here. Enjoy some ice cream. Enjoy some pizza. I shouldn't say that while the doctor's looking at me, but okay. But enjoy it. But don't forget, it's passing. It's fleeting. It doesn't last. So I want to read all of this again, give a couple quick summary points, and then we're going to head into small group discussion. So let's read from 1 down to 11. The words of the teacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Futile, futile, laments the teacher. Absolutely futile. Everything is futile or vanity. What benefit do people get from all the effort which they expend on earth? A generation comes and a generation goes, but the earth remains the same through the ages. The sun rises and the sun sets. It hurries away to a place from which it rises again. The wind goes to the south and circles around to the north. Round and round the wind goes, and on its rounds it returns. All the streams flow into the sea, but the sea is not full. And to the place where the streams flow, they will flow again. All this monotony is tiresome. No one can bear to describe it. The eye is never satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear ever content with hearing. What exists now is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing truly new on earth under the sun. Is there anything about which someone can say, look at this, it is new. It was already done long ago before our time. No one remembers the former events, nor will anyone remember the events that are yet to happen. They will not be remembered by the future generations. Okay, so what he has to say is true about things when we compare them to eternity, right? Like eternity is vastly longer, vastly more important, and vastly more satisfying and fulfilling than the things that are temporary and passing here. But remember, he is looking at what do we do? We have to live here. This is where we are. God has given us certain things. How do we enjoy them? How do we have perspective? How do we have balance? How do we think about our own lives as a vapor? What does it mean to live life here under the sun? Okay? So what are we getting so far? We're starting to get to see Kohelet's mindset. Where's he going? Well, he's starting to have some depth to what he's going to say. He starts out with big statements, and now he's going to justify those statements and put all things to the test. In the next few weeks, we're going to see these topics being put to the test. What value can we get out of them? He's got a real down-to-earth perspective, because he'll just say things like, matter of fact. You know, we all know the sun just keeps going around, going around, going around, going around. It's just a matter of fact. He says them in a matter of fact, but uses them to illustrate other things. So I'm going to have you guys talk in your groups. Do you agree with his initial thesis? Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. I hope that you're also going to learn how to read and apply what he is saying, letting him speak, because he is bringing people in, like yourself, in the audience, say, let's consider this. What is going on in life? What is the value here? What can we say and what can we not say? He's not going to give you pad answers that you can put on a bumper sticker, okay? Because what are bumper stickers? Well, that's nice. It's probably true on the bumper sticker. But what does it say? It doesn't say enough. It doesn't analyze enough. It doesn't give enough thrust to the statements that are there. He will not forget about all the emotion that's attached to something. He doesn't just say this out of his mind, oh, yeah, it's all vanity. He feels it, and he'll continue to feel it as we read through more chapters. So we're getting things up and running and swirling. All these topics are going to start swirling together, but they bring perspective. They bring the things I mentioned last week that hopefully you'll get out of this study. Okay? So I'm going to pray, and then we can head downstairs for your small group time. Okay. Dear God, thank you so much that your word is here. It's alive. Even though this is written probably 3,000 years ago, it still applies today. It still has value today. It has stood the test of time, and we want to be wise. We want to be comforted with these words, but we also know that there are some sobering things to say. There are some joyful things to say. There are some things that we need to keep in balance and not just create caricatures or create things that we slap on a bumper sticker. We want to wrestle with these things because we want to honor and glorify you with what we say and what we do and how we go about life. I pray that you bless the time as we have with everybody together in our groups to be a benefit to each other and to glorify your name. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.